participation is allowed using the Zoom program. I think we can go right to call for order for the October 7th Public Arts Committee meeting. Jeff,
Here.
Lars,
Here.
Warren,
Here.
and I am here. And we can add Margie in later if she comes. When she comes.
Sounds good.
Okay, so did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes from September 2nd? Warren, did you get to see those?
I got them and I'd like to make one comment.
Okay,
I just want to comment on page 16 under Carrie, the third point. A sculpture would be going up in the next few weeks. I think you should say there are many sculptures going up in the next few weeks. The whole lot will be covered with sculptures, including the two that we might have gotten for the bridge. Okay. That's my comment. Thank you.
So change it from sculptures to sculpture. I think at the time I did not know the content of it. So, but I think
It's going to be a carnival of sculptures.
all right. Well, hopefully we can get an update as part of 6B on that as well.
okay, anybody else have any issues with the minutes, or do I have a motion to approve them?
I move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Say nay. All right.
All right. And I do see for the record that we have 4 ayes and then 1 person absent for that vote.
Thank you. Okay, is there any public comments? Okay,
We have not received any public comments via email.
okay, great. Any statements of conflict of interest? Okay, we can go directly into the regular agenda items. 6A would be the update on the support for the artists during COVID-19. That was Margie and I's subcommittee, and we did go to City Council last night, and we were approved for the $2,000 to split into 4 pieces for artists, which technically we could email. Margie and I have worked on an email to send out to Catherine to have her send out to her list of artists. Other than that, they're going to their budget meeting on October 14th. And at that point, they will decide at that time if they can give us the matching funds for the additional $2,000. Either way, we can still email now. And if we get an extra 2,000 on October 14th, that seems to be okay. So otherwise we stick with the 2, and that's what we'll have. We'll do the lottery. I got the bingo, the lottery balls from Jeff, and we can do those at the November meeting. And so that's basically it. We have a little introduction that just says, hi, we're hello, and then it goes through the list of order of everything that you've already seen. The only things that were changed were we changed the zip code to 95472 and 3 to just 95472, so that they're literal residents in Sebastopol instead of adding everybody's PO box. Other than that, the only other thing that we changed, since you've all seen the information, was we are not asking the gallery, the Sebastopol Gallery, to send out emails. Right now, we're just going to stick with the Sebastopol Center for the Arts email list. And I think we're going to have enough response, hopefully, from that. And if anybody has any comment on that, that's basically the only few things that that we had to report today.
Right, and those were
Congratulations.
direction from
Thank you.
council, and the 95473 is apparently the PO boxes. The 95472 does include areas outside the city limits, and they felt that that would be adequate. So.
Would you be so kind as to repeat the timeline for the mailing out and then the deadline for candidates to submit their applications?
Yes, so our hope is to, we already penned together the email, which is in essence a small paragraph that says hello, who we are, that it's the Public Arts Committee and the Sebastopol and the City of Sebastopol, with everything that you've already seen with those two changes. We will send that to Catherine this afternoon after this meeting, if that's okay with everybody. And then hopefully Catherine gets it and sends it out to her email list today. Maybe it'll be tomorrow. I know she's been very busy and kind of manning that ship by herself. So every once in a while, I've been in contact with her. It's taken her a day to get back, but I'm assuming that would be today or tomorrow. On October 14th, City Council goes back for their budget review, at which time on their agenda will be to review our proposal for matching funds. And hopefully they say yes. If not, it's also fine because we can still work with what we have. At the next meeting that we have in November, we will pull the lottery balls. So right before that meeting, as the subcommittee, our job will be to put together our entries, and put the numbers together, and then we can pull the lottery.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
And Jen, just one note on that. Margie had put together the sort of the draft timeline that we reviewed at the last pack, and also instructions on that for the artists. I think I had finalized that with the updated dates for the city council meeting last night, but it still has a sort of draft watermark on it. Do you want me to take that draft watermark off and then send you the final?
Would you like me to send it to you with the few edits that I've already made? Because I believe that still has the older zip code on it.
Sure. Yeah. If you have the Word document and you're able to do that, that'd be great.
Yes, I do.
Great.
And I believe I'm seeing that possibly Margie is trying to call my phone. I'm wondering if she didn't find the Zoom. So I might, and I can email that to you right now. The updated proposal. Okay, is there any other questions that I can answer about this? No? Okay. If it's okay, we'll move ahead today and we will be ready to go. Okay. Should we move ahead?
Yes, let's please do to the NEDCON item, and I can just give a brief intro for anyone out on the interwebs who are watching. This is a project that was, we've been working with Ned since he was selected as the first artist for the city's public art first commission. There's some issues with the site, and I'm just going to hand it off to Warren and Ned to go ahead and talk to sort of what's been going on. There's history in the staff report. I think this group knows that history, and Ned is currently looking for alternatives due to cost constraints.
So can I just talk a little bit about it now?
Please
Yes,
do, yes.
I want to know how many of you were on the bus when we went out with Kenyon to look at sites in 2016? None of you?
That was Margie and you, Warren, I believe.
Okay, I didn't remember who was with me, but anyway, we had a Saturday morning when Kenyon rented a bus and we went around Sebastopol looking at potential sites. And Ned chose one of those and submitted along with many people, and but was after quite a lot of winnowing out. And with public presentation of his designs, we accepted his proposal. And then he has sent me a list of at least 13 places he tried to put it that were never good enough for one reason or another. For example, at the south end of the northwest end of the bridge, there were a big open spot, and Unfortunately, the power lines interfered and that would cost a fortune to move the power lines. That didn't work. So we went all over the town looking for places, and then one was finally picked. But Caltrans had to be dealt with. And as he said, that is a gauntlet to run. And so after many, many, many trips to Caltrans with Kenyon Webster to Oakland, back and forth, they finally came up with a couple of approvals, but not all of them. There was always something wrong from Caltrans' opinion. So we went to the second iteration of his design, and that was also a Caltrans problem, and never all stages of Caltrans objections were ever approved. So last spring I said, well, why don't I talk to Ned about this project? And that was a huge amount of time getting back and forth with Ned. He was either out of town, he was in the hospital, his wife was in the hospital, he was engaged in this and that, he went away for the smoke. And finally, in September, we met on a park bench in downtown Sevastopol. And I said to Ned, and I had already talked to this committee about this, why don't we move on, Ned? This doesn't seem to be working out. And he agreed to that. And that night I got an email. He, after our discussion, walked down on the bridge and came up with a whole new idea. And that's what he's presenting today if he's here. His whole, I can't remember, the hardest thing about doing a sculpture is naming it. And he came up with some name, and I don't even remember what it is, something like Turbulent Bridge. But anyway, it's a whole different, it's a horizontal thing. You have all the renderings, I think, in your packet. Mm-hmm. So is Ned here to describe it, to answer questions?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Hey, there he is.
Yes.
I've been sitting
Okay.
quietly listening to you the whole time. Yeah, well, thank you, Warren. Thank you, Carrie. Thank all you guys for hanging in there with me. I know it's been a convoluted, twisted path going back 4 years. Yeah, after Warren and I decided to throw in the towel, I thought, well, let me just go out there one more time and kind of, sort of make my peace with the place. And because it's really been an astounding amount of effort. I mean, I have files that go on and on and on. I mean, it's literally been hundreds of hours of thought and time and meetings and et cetera. And so I just sort of wanted to have some closure. And I went out there and I just suddenly realized that right from the get-go, right from that bus ride with Kenyon, I got fixated on using these big concrete columns that Caltrans had put in. And they spent $100 grand on each of those columns. There's 2 of them for some kind of gateway piece. And so I kind of followed their lead. And, in retrospect, it led me to a bunch of flawed assumptions. So one was they put those columns right next to the roadway, which triggered all kinds of Caltrans rules and regulations and worries about driver distraction. And so it also sort of put the artwork kind of not on the bridge itself, kind of, sort of in a no man's land, kind of where the bridge sort of lands on the western edge of the Laguna. And then it also sort of locked me into the idea of doing, kind of 2 tall kind of gateway pieces. And so then, the Caltrans gauntlet, they were like, well, okay, well, we like the idea of having something there, but there can't be anything kinetic where, people, are looking while they're driving. So you got to put the kinetic part way up high. And so then, these columns just kept getting taller and bigger and turned into these massive pieces of steel that ended up costing like $250,000 to fabricate. And so it all seemed wrong and daunting and kind of, and so going back to the drawing board, looking at the bridge freshly, I thought, well, what if I just forget those columns? What if I address, instead of doing a vertical piece, what if it's a horizontal piece? What if it's a piece that kind of follows the railing of the bridge and and becomes a horizontal piece, and it becomes a piece that kind of really celebrates the section of the bridge that spans the Laguna, which was kind of my whole concept from day one, was the idea that the Laguna, you don't really see it except when it's like hugely flooding. And so so something that really celebrated the river. And so there's Margie. Welcome, Margie. Yeah. So that led me to rethink the whole thing, and I'm super excited about kind of this proposal. It's actually of all the ideas that have been hashed over these 4 years, this is the one that I'm most jazzed about. And so I know you guys have gotten a package of some of my renderings, and there was a video link that I sent Carrie that I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at, but that's a video of a parking garage that I did in Columbus, Ohio for their convention center. And it's essentially a series of these long curtains of this the same polycarbonate chainmail fabric that I proposed last time. But instead of it being kind of these 20-foot by 20-foot sheets, it's 5 foot tall, running the whole length of basically if you're looking down on the bridge, the Spesswell Bridge, there's a concrete section that essentially is the real bridge part, is the part that spans the roadway. And so the idea is that build a whole bunch of clamps that would clamp to the concrete railing. There's this huge concrete beam on each side of the bridge. And the idea is to clamp to that. One of the things that does, in addition to kind of having this thing that's much more cohesive and really with the bridge and celebrates the water, it uses much smaller pieces of metal, much more affordable pieces of metal. It makes the whole project workable within the budget that we have. So I don't know, is it possible to, yeah, so there's an aerial view. And so one of the things that I should point out is that I put the curtain, this kinetic curtain, up high enough that when you're on the bridge itself, when you're driving, you look right through just the vertical. So it doesn't block the view of the landscape going by. If you're a pedestrian on the bridge, it doesn't block your view of the landscape. So it's essentially above your head. And so the Caltrans gauntlet, I mean, basically the question today is, you know, do you guys think this is a good idea? And if you do, you know, the next stage would be taking it back to Caltrans. Caltrans, as Kenyon and I learned the hard way, they make up the rules as they go along. There's there's no oversight on them. They basically can just change the rules as they go along. And we witnessed that multiple times. What I think this design has going for it is that it uses the exact same materials that they approved last time. It just changes the orientation of it. And it places the kinetic surface much farther away from the roadway than it was before with those two vertical columns. So my hope is that Caltrans might be good with this, but again, it's a very arbitrary process. So with that, the other thing I should add is Warren, in his revision to your minutes, mentioned the sculpture garden temporary sculpture garden that I'm doing in the site of where the new Hotel Sebastopol will be eventually. They give me the property for a year or two, depending on how long it takes them to kind of get their funding happening again. We're getting ready to install a series of pieces there. There's a funder, local funder, who's helping fund that project and is super excited about it. And if you guys were good with this design revision, besides going through the Caltrans gauntlet, I'd like to propose it to them. And I think it's the kind of thing where they would be super excited about funding it. They're a husband and wife. They fund all kinds of environmental education things, art projects. They're funding my sculpture garden there. They're also funding, potentially funding moving that sculpture garden to the site of what used to be called Ocean Song out on Coleman Valley Road as a permanent location for it after it has its run in Sebastopol. So, so yeah, if you guys are into this, take it back to Caltrans. I have a relationship with David Ng, who's kind of their, he's been our main portal interface. I think I could kind of informally show him this and say, you know, what do you guys think? Or we could do a more formal kind of going back to them with the revised proposal. So with that, questions, comments, other things from you guys?
Now, did you want me to show the video? It's about a minute long, so it's not long. See if
Yeah,
that
yeah,
works over the Zoom.
Yeah, the video is worth 1,000 words.
Let's try it. And Ned, this is the actual installation in Columbus?
Yeah, yeah, this is a real unmessed with video. Yeah, as you can see, it's a super minimalist, sort of brutal concrete parking structure, and it's the main kind of view that people driving on the freeway and kind of from downtown Columbus see of the convention center. So they came to me and said, please help mitigate this thing that we've built. And so these are about 10-foot tall curtains. There's 3 of them, and they're about 120 feet long, something like that. And so what I proposed for the bridge in Sebastopol would be half the height, would be 5 feet tall, but almost 3 times the length. So 300 feet long, which is the concrete part of the bridge that spans the water. You can kind of see from the video that the bottom half of these curtains is the most active part. So making them half the height doesn't diminish the dynamic movement.
Great, thank you, Ned. So we don't have any members of the public here, so I'll just, if Jen, if you could just facilitate.
I think everybody probably has a few questions. So if you want to go one by one, does somebody want to start?
Yeah, I'll start.
Just to know, I did mute everyone, including Warren, because there's a little bit of background noise.
Okay. Hi, Ned. Can you hear me? I'm Jeff.
Yeah, hi, Jeff.
So first of all, Ned, I just wanted to appreciate you and your work. I love your work, both that's been installed locally in Sonoma County and internationally. And I appreciate all the graphics and information you put together to help describe and explain this proposal. And I just want to start by saying I really loved the original vertical sculpture plan. For me, that was a feeling of a gate. And mostly because of the contrast between the horizontal, the bridge, and the verticals. But I've come to terms with this new proposal, which I see more like a ceilingless tunnel. And so that leads to a few of my questions. One is about, and I'll just give you 2 or 3 at a time to kind of respond to. The first one is about the sensitivity to wind and movement of those panels, and what would we expect to see either as a pedestrian or as a driver. And then have any of your other installations that are similar to this been installed along a roadway or a highway where there is pretty constant, frequent vehicular movement like this? And then the third question is more about, was there any thought on your part about varying the height along the length? So I'll just stop there.
Yeah, well, those are all good questions. Yeah, so as far as the responsiveness, this chainmail fabric is an amazingly responsive medium for visualizing the wind. I mean, it's almost like a vertical sheet of water. So even in the, when there's just gentle wind, it does really beautiful, interesting things. And then the windier it is, the more amazing it becomes. It's a pretty windy site there. It's a pretty open, unfettered site there. I've spent a bunch of time there. And so yeah, I'm 100% confident it'll do really beautiful things. I think the passage of big vehicles, trucks going by will also animate the materials. So I think it'll be responsive to vehicles too, as well as the natural wind. Car lights at night will be a very interesting kind of free illumination of the artwork. So beams of car lights as they're progressing across the bridge will kind of create this sort of pool of light that'll progress across. So yeah, I think all of that I'm 100% confident in. As far as the question about other pieces next to roadways, one of the presentations that Kenyon and I did at Caltrans is, so when we first started talking to Caltrans said, oh, well, we have these rules about, public art along the roadways and it can't have any kinetic elements. And I said, well, you guys just made that up. Like, what's your issue? Well, there's your safety. Well, can I come in and convince you that it's actually totally safe to have something kinetic next to a roadway? And they said, yes. Kenny and I go down there. I had a whole video presentation. I showed them project after project. 30 years of projects. And every project I had roadway data of like how many vehicles had driven by these projects in the span of, some of them been up for 10, 20 years. And I had a little board there and I kept adding up the numbers. At the end, we were up to 500 million vehicles have driven by various artworks in various places around the planet over the span of decades with 0 accidents, 0 incidents. And so I'm like, okay, here's the data. And they all looked at each other and one of them said, but our rules say we can't have anything kinetic next to the roadway. And I'm like, oh. So it was a year and a half of kind of continuing this conversation before they kind of said, okay, well, I guess it's safe to have something kinetic next to the roadway. So they've come around to that. And so hopefully we won't have to jump through that hoop again. But again, who knows? They're very arbitrary. And so, and then you had a third question that I'm forgetting what it is now.
I was just asking about, at any point, did you consider varying the heights along the entire length of the bridge installation?
Yeah, I pondered it. I actually did some sketches where I varied the height and I varied the width of it. And I kind of came back to sort of the simplest configuration with the idea that instead of me kind of imposing an artistic, kind of flourish to let nature do it, to let the wind do it, to have this be the simplest configuration and let the kind of complexity and turbulence and gusts of the wind be the real sculptor of it.
Okay, thank you, Ned.
Okay, let's move on. Lars, do you have any questions?
Sure. Overall, I think this looks great. And Ned, thanks for your efforts for sure on this and all the rest. One simple question, like, would the wind be dynamic enough that the panel could swing to where a pedestrian could touch it or be swacked by it? I guess it's high enough that they wouldn't actually be able to touch it. Is that right?
Yeah, and even if it wasn't, it's an amazingly harmless material. I covered, and I can send you guys a link to a video of it, a parking structure entrance in Los Angeles, just north of the LAX airport. And it's a kind of cylindrical structure and it's wrapped in with curtains of the same material. So there's a bunch of places where people can touch it. And it's been up for many years and it's impossible to damage. It's soft when, so yeah, I don't think it would be any kind of a hazard to people. I don't think it'd be any kind of a hazard to birds. Birds just ignore it. I've had a bunch of prototypes here in my studio for years and years. The birds pay no attention to it. Even when it's super windy, I've never seen it flip over. That was kind of, one of my worries when I started playing with these curtains just held at the top, that a big gust of wind would come and flip the thing over, but I haven't witnessed it happening. There's so much porosity of the fabric that it doesn't act as much of a sail to have it flip over. So yeah, and it's also, another thing I should point out, the fabric is 50% open. And so in some of the renderings that I did, it kind of looks more, like it's 100%, but it's actually more of a scrim and more of like a net. So as you're driving, even where the fabric is, you're looking right through it. So one of the earlier iterations of this long process was, some public comment was, oh, we don't want to obscure the view of the landscape there. And so I really tried to be respectful of that. And so it leaves, a whole section unfettered at all. And then the rest of it is 50%, so yeah, you can really see through it.
Okay, no, that's great. I think I really like it even, some ways more than the other one. Just, when Caltrans put those piers in, I'm sure everybody, a lot of people were just imagining like, the entrance to Willits or Camp Meeker and a big sign going across the roadway. And this is to me, it sort of subverts that. It gives this incredible strong presence to the entrance of the town, but does it in a very different way, which I really like. So the only other comment I would have is, given your lovely lengthy experience with Caltrans, like going to them sooner and simpler is probably, just to try and get an initial, yes, this can work. So you don't have to spend tons of time at it. And I know in general, I've said this before to this group, I know in general, like Caltrans actually does have guidelines of treating state highways that go through small towns very differently than, an interstate highway. So kind of appealing to that, that part of Caltrans that does think about things in that way is always, to me, always a good card to play. But so those are my only comments.
Thanks, Lars. Margie?
Hi, Ned.
I'm Ari.
Thank you for coming back and working so hard on this. I really want us to be able to have a piece of your sculpture for the town. And it's a little hard for me to fully visualize and feel what this would be. And therefore, it brings up some concerns. Jeff called it a ceilingless tunnel. And so I just want to say what my concerns are, and I'm hoping they'll be dispelled. So it did feel to me like it makes a tunnel for people to enter the city with, which is enclosed. The fact that we can see through it might help that. I'm concerned about, the most people who will see it will be the drivers. The vision, the images from other perspectives are beautiful. And I'm thinking about what it's going to be like as a driver going across that. A lot of movement. And yes, I understand it's above, but I'm wondering about that. And also that the lights, that there are people who are sensitive to flickering lights. And cars in driving, when a car passes you, that's one thing to deal with. But if there's a continual reflection of that, which is not, might be, even though it's above, it might still affect people. And then you said that the cars driving by would make it even go faster. And so that's one thing. And then I'm wondering about sound. and what sound would be created there. So I understand that this is more visualizing the wind, as you said. The initial thing you created, which probably we have to let go of, but also reflected visually, which was very beautiful, the nature around it. I'm wondering about, and I don't know if this would be work at all, but just maybe have these curtains in the first section of the tunnel, excuse me, of the bridge. Maybe the first 5 sections or something, or some sort of way of making it not so much a tunnel. So those are my concerns. And as I say, I really do want us to have something of yours as a city public arts. And I really appreciate all the work I know that's an astounding amount of effort. And I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've never sort of imagined it feeling like a tunnel. I imagined it more like an environment that you enter and you pass through. So just in my experience of, the 100+ commissions I've done over the years, the ones that have been more of an environment, an immersive environment, have been so much more successful than the ones that are kind of more like a freestanding sculpture. And so that was part of my thinking. Part of my thinking was also that the bridge, as it currently is so boring, and it's just like you don't even realize it's a bridge. It's just like, an extension of Highway 12. And so when you actually go underneath the bridge, it's kind of an amazing structure. And so I really wanted to kind of celebrate the fact that this is a bridge. Most people are like, barely aware of that, except when the Laguna really floods. Then it becomes obvious. So I was intrigued with the whole idea, and this image that you're looking at kind of captures that. You have the Laguna kind of flowing perpendicular to the bridge. So the idea of a bridge that's kind of a fluid bridge, and that's kind of has its energy field is perpendicular to the natural field. I think it's a really powerful kind of I don't know, minimalist idea. The flickering panels. I mean, the piece that I mentioned at the parking structure in Columbus, which so that one we just finished a few months ago. It's right next to a super busy freeway. I mean, it's the equivalent of 101, and so there's just a million cars driving across, and that parking structure is like a couple hundred yards from that freeway, and it gets hit by direct sunlight, and it gets illuminated by car lights, and it's been zero complaints or issues. The piece in Los Angeles, that is not next to a super busy road, but it's a pretty busy road, and that's been up for many, many years. And there's people's apartments right next door to it. A bunch of people's fancy, expensive condos look right at it. There's been zero complaints or issues, and that gets full sunlight, and it's a couple miles from the ocean, so it's very windy there. So as far as sound, I know you asked about sound. It's amazingly silent. When it's crazy super windy, you might hear a little bit of a whistling sound going through the fabric, but you'd have to stand right next to it to hear that. So it's essentially silent. And what else did you ask me that I'm forgetting?
Well, there was the lights, and I'm glad to hear about the sound. That's great. And one thing I did forget to ask you about, which I'd like to add, just so the other thing I was wondering about was like, so there are these regular beams along the whole bridge. And so again, that most people who will see it will be moving in a car. And just those beams, so it adds that kind of movement that you're passing beam after beam. It's kind of like when we pass sometimes a section that has wires on posts, telephone wires or so on. And there's that regularity. So that was one thing I was wondering about too. And then I had another thought, which was like some way to make it not as much enclosing, it's constantly the same, would be to have a curve, either in the vertical plane or in the horizontal plane. So maybe that it would go up a little at some point along the bridge and then down. I don't suppose it could go out. It may be, so that's another thought. Yeah, so just that it's I hear what you're saying about that you like movement and in environment. I just want to have a clear and comfortable sense of the environment this would create for drivers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, a couple things I'll add to what I said before. One is one of the things that I would say to Caltrans when I talk to them is it would be very easy and economical for us to fabricate like one section of this, and it just clamps to the concrete column. And so we could put up a test panel, like a 20-foot long panel with two clamps, kind of two of those curved beams that you're kind of looking at in that image, and we could do it on each side. So, and we could shoot a video of it, and we could, you know, shoot a video of what it looks like with a car driving through there. And so, you know, that could be just something that we like clamp in place, shoot the video, take it down. You guys could all come look at it, and Caltrans could come look at it. So, so yeah, instead of it being theoretical, like let's actually do a real experiment and show them that it's actually a totally benign thing. So that was one thing. I had similar thoughts that you did, that you mentioned about kind of introducing a curve to it. And I did some drawings of just what you described, kind of having it lift up in the center and come back down. I also did some drawings kind of as you described of having it kind of not be parallel to the bridge to kind of push out in the center. I didn't like them. I kind of came back to a simpler version. One of the things I should point out though is the bridge has a subtle arc to it. So the bridge does have a high point in the center. And so the idea that I proposed in these renderings is the artwork kind of follows the bridge. So it will have a subtle rise in the center. You'll be mostly aware of it when you look at the bridge from the side. And the views from kind of the parkland underneath the bridge are actually going to be amazing. And so that little park that's at the southwest corner of the bridge, Tomodachi Park, is a beautiful place. And you go into that park and you have just a beautiful view of the side of the bridge. And so, you know, the times of year when that's not underwater, it's a beautiful place to hang out, and you're underneath the freeway, so you don't have all the sound of the cars and sort of the cars sort of imposing on your, so it's actually a relatively peaceful place. And similarly, at the opposite end of the bridge, kind of the northeast corner of the bridge, there's a little trail from the trail that leads kind of from, there's a trailhead at the next to the Chevron station, and that trail kind of goes all along the Laguna and other places, but there's a little spur of that trail that takes you down to the bridge, and that's another beautiful place to hang out. And so, you know, I thought about you know, putting a bench or a series of benches there, and a series of benches in the opposite corner, and make a place to encourage people to sit and have a more peaceful experience than the one kind of you would have kind of walking across the bridge or driving across the bridge.
Okay, thanks. Let's move on if that's okay with you, Margie. We'll go to Warren.
Here, yes, I had a couple other things, but let's go on for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Warren, do you have any questions, comments?
Okay, am I on now? I can't hear.
Yes, you are, Warren.
Thank you. Ned, are there any installation issues?
This design is so much easier to install than the last one. The last one, it would involve huge cranes, multiple cranes, closing lanes. All of that was a big issue with Caltrans. Basically, this design just clamps to the railing. Like, we can do it all from the sidewalk. We don't even need any kind of equipment. We don't need to block any roadways. So it saves a huge amount of money. I mean, I was going to spend just $10,000 on just crane time to put the last design up. So this is a vast improvement as far as installation. And it's also the case, as I mentioned before, like, we can easily put up a section of this and have everyone look at it. And even if we did the whole thing and, it turned out to be, Caltrans decided, this is not workable, or they decide they want to build a new bridge or whatever, you can go out there and unclamp it all and take it all down, in a day. So it's an entirely removable, transplantable thing too.
So it'll be locked down so the public can't remove it.
Yeah, basically some tamper-proof bolts. Basically, it's a stainless steel clamp that will clamp to that existing concrete railing every 10 feet. Roughly, it's essentially following the rhythm that's already there of kind of how they have supported that. I ran all this by my engineers who signed off on the last couple designs, and they were totally good with it. So, if you guys like this and Caltrans, gives us the green light, the engineering is very straightforward compared to the previous designs, which were complicated engineering tasks.
So I think this is a project that's open to individual interpretation in terms of the light and the movement. And I really appreciate all of that you've done. I was really fortunate in the 70s to see the Christo panels going out along the coast. And this, for me, is another wrapping kind of project. And I think that harmony is really great. You're intimating or saying that you think you need to run this by Caltrans before we do approval, or shouldn't we approve it and the city council before you take that step?
Well, you guys have your process. So the way I imagine, if you guys today said, well, we like this idea, go see if it flies, I would take it to Caltrans informally and see if it flies with them. And then if both of those seem like green lights, then I think it might be the time to take it to council. But you guys are making that decision, not me. That's kind of what I imagine.
And Ned, I can chip on that as well. I think Ned's suggestion makes sense in terms of I actually took over from Kenyon on some of the permitting, and they actually had me redo the permit that was already in process from Kenyon. And I've been working with David Ng on that as well, and he's certainly much more accessible than others, the other parts of the process at Caltrans. So I think it would make sense if we're getting nods from this group, and then maybe it's both of us, or maybe it's just you, but to go and talk to Caltrans about, and start with David, about this as an alternative and what the process would be and what their concerns are before bringing it up to council. Because if they have revisions and things like that, it'd be kind of nice to know any big sticking points. And have those kind of worked out with this committee if possible.
Thank you, Carrie.
Can I add just one more comment? You kind of mentioned Christo's running fence, and Christo was a major inspiration of mine, and so I really viewed this piece as kind of a I don't know, an appreciation, an homage to Christo, in a subtle, not obvious way, but definitely a nod in his and Jean-Claude's direction.
Thank you for saying that. That's wonderful. So also I want to mention there is a speed limit on the bridge, and if people observe it, they won't be getting into any trouble with the light, reflection, wind movement, or any of that, I don't think.
Yeah, usually they're sitting in traffic, moving like 3 miles an hour, so it's entirely
Yes.
fine.
Not an issue. Plus, I've never seen a person on the bridge walking.
I'm the only one I've seen walking on it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Ned. We're basically really appreciative of all that. I'm glad we met.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. The truth is, after we decided to throw in the towel, I looked in your eyes and I just
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you, Warren.
Okay, thanks, Warren. Okay, so I definitely have a couple of questions. It's gone, like you mentioned earlier, it's been 4 years that we've been going back and forth with this. And I really would like to see this not go another 4 years. And now we're starting from scratch. Starting from scratch to the point where, there's even a question of we're using public funds. We had the public vote on your original piece. There's almost a question of whether we should even take it back to the public again. I don't want to do that, but I do have those thoughts in my head, that's what we're spending this on. Even some of the photos that you had, the height on some of the photos brings the curtain right to the edge. Some of them show it quite higher. So I don't know if that would weigh heavily on different people's views. So as far as just a general timeline, what do you even see this? Is this, starting from scratch at this point, in my head, I can't imagine this taking less than a year and at the minimum. Where's your head on that? What are you thinking?
This is a way easier thing to fabricate. If I got the green light from you guys in the city and from Caltrans, we could fabricate this whole thing in 3 months. We could put it all up in a couple days. Caltrans is the big unknown. And, with the pandemic and everyone working at home, who knows how long it'll take them. Again, I tried to use the exact same materials and finishes that they had approved previously, hoping that that would, make it more expedient. But yeah, who knows with them? But yeah, they're the unknown. But yeah, I don't want to wait another 4 years. I even thought the second they approve it, we can be ready to start installing it. And so they would have no chance to change their minds.
That sounds good. The other big thing that I'm really curious about, it looks huge and it looks very expensive. So is what we're giving you just a drop in the bucket and you're going to have to go out for other funding for that? Or are you going to be asking us for more funding? And what are you estimating this to even cost?
Well, first of all, I've completed over 100 commissions going back 30 years. I've never asked anyone for more money. So I'm not going to do that. The support structure is vastly less expensive than the previous vertical design. 10% of the cost of the previous design. The actual chainmail fabric pieces, I have them. We actually fabricated them for a project in Emeryville that fell by the wayside with the pandemic and other things. And so I have almost all the stuff to do it. And so yeah, the economics work. The timing works. Caltrans is the unknown.
You have a feeling, like a gut feeling on the odds of whether Caltrans would say yes to this? I'm sure that's why you moved in this direction, right? Like you're feeling good about it.
Yeah, well, a couple of those drawings that I include in the package were like sections through the bridge, and they show the actual numbers of like this is the distance between the driver's eyes and the kinetic surface. That's going to be the one drawing that they're going to care about. All those other drawings, they're going to be like, yeah, those are cool. And so their whole thing is, you're in your car, you're driving. There's this field, this like cone of vision. And the previous design were right in the middle of that cone of vision, which triggered all their worries. This is outside of that. So in my naive hope, they'll go, yeah, this is so much better. This is great. And, they'll probably make us change a few things just to kind of show us who's boss. But anyway, that's my hope.
Okay, can you, and the only other thing I wanted to touch on, something that Margie had said, which the comment saying possibly felt like a tunnel. Some of the pictures that Carrie has been putting up, I'm assuming they all came from you, right, Ned?
Yeah.
A couple of them, you really do have the curtain down to the bottom. So the pictures, there's some pictures from on the outside view. But you're saying it would be quite a bit higher, so that no matter what you're driving through there, you're going to still be able to see out past the curtain below the bottom, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you're calling attention to my limited Photoshop skills and abilities. So, and a number of those drawings I did to kind of, they were kind of conceptual drawings to kind of give you guys just sort of the sense of this. The drawings that I would submit to Caltrans would be different than the ones that I've sent to you guys. They would be very accurate dimensionally, and they would kind of show the transparency of it, and basically they would be tailored to not get them nervous. So I was trying to give you guys a sense of how beautiful and amazing this thing is going to be. With Caltrans, I'm going to try to give them a sense of how invisible and minimal this is going to be.
And so, and one last thing, you're going to clamp these to the part of the bridge, and you don't think that we're also going to have to go through some engineering steps as well to have that approved? You just think it's going to be a Caltrans thing and we can go in there and we can attach whatever we want to the bridge?
No. So I already ran it by my engineers. Andres Studio, Paul Andres and his partner, Dave Campbell, they're based in Emeryville. Caltrans, as we learned from the last multiple iterations, they don't want to engineer this. They want us to engineer it. So basically, if you go back to them with a stamped drawing from my engineers, they're like, yeah, fine, that's great. That's as far as that they care about it. And so yeah, I ran it by my engineers. As soon as I had the idea, I'm like, is this structurally workable? And they're like, oh yeah, that thing's massive. They were like, that thing is designed to like stop, trucks from, crashing into the Laguna. That thing, even if it wasn't attached to the bridge, just the weight of it alone, that concrete beam would hold this thing up. So it's not dependent on its structural connection to the bridge itself. So yeah, they were like, this is way, way easier. They basically said, whenever you're ready, we'll stamp your drawings for you.
And Sherberts, I can, because I've been indoctrinated a little bit on the Caltrans process, working with Ned on the previous version. There's I think there are two key things that they will be looking for for the actual permitting of it. One is, as Ned noted, the structural engineering component of it, which is what we did last time. Ned's engineers submitted the drawings for Caltrans review and approval. And the other is a sign off from Ned's engineers or a traffic engineer as to basically the fact that it won't be a distraction or a cause of safety hazard from a traffic perspective. Those were the two key things that we had to submit for the last design, and I imagine we'll need to submit those again.
Thank you. And finally, my end here is, if we say yes, take it to Caltrans, would that be something we might be able to hear about by the next meeting? Or is that something in our history of going back to Caltrans? It just might be a few months before that even comes back up with a response from them.
I would hope that they could give us at least an informal response quickly. A formal response, I imagine, will take them longer. I have a good rapport with David Ing. Carrie's had some conversations with him too. He's a good guy. He, he's just a cog in the Caltrans machine. So he has all kinds of bosses. And again, it's all, unknown. But I would plunge right into it if you guys are interested, excited about this direction.
Thank you. And I did see Margie raise her hand, but I just want to note that it is after 11:30 and we still have subcommittee updates. So go ahead, Margie. And then if anybody else has any questions, let me know, and then we'll quickly touch on those.
Okay, so I'll just go quickly through. So one question is, last time there was a slowdown because there was an issue about insurance. And I'm wondering, is that taken care of? Number two, are we going to see a budget? Do we need a budget? Number three, you did mention a test, doing a 20-foot test panel. If we did an approval and there were any questions or shifts after the test, do we need to do another approval, or are we just letting go of the idea of a test? And if there is a test panel, you said that's 20 feet. Does anyone have offhand the full length of the bridge?
Full length of the bridge is 300 feet. And and that was just an arbitrary, one panel that I made up. We could do a series of them too. It depends on what Caltrans would let us do for a test. Your other questions, insurance, I think that's all worked out. I remember a bunch of back and forth with Kenyon and the city and all that. And so I'm pretty sure that's a clear path forward. And then you asked about a budget. Yes, I'll definitely produce a budget, and I'll show kind of, and again, if you guys give me the green light, I'm going to talk to these funders, and they might want to be recognized somehow. I don't know. They're not super ego people like that, but they might want to have some kind of recognition that they paid for the bulk of this thing. Anyway, I can broach that conversation with them.
So in terms of funding, then there would be funders included. Sounds like you're saying. Okay. And so then I'm not sure what we would be approving in stages or what. And second, my last thing is that I liked what Warren said about the wrapping project. And I'm trying really hard to experience this as something that feels just great and fine. And I still personally feel that it would be nice if there was some break in the continuity of the tunnel-like thing, going up or doing sections or doing something. I just want to say that. Because my main concern is the car view. I'm sure from all the other views, it's beautiful and wonderful, but that's my concern. Thank you.
Yeah, well, the last thing I'll add is we were hoping to have it done today, but we're working on a video animation where we're basically taking some of the video from that Columbus parking garage structure and splicing it into some drone photographs and other photographs of the existing bridge. So that'll give you a much more representative idea of what this is really going to look like. So that's coming soon.
Okay. Jen, can I go ahead, and I'd like to make a motion.
Do
So
we
would I.
pass a motion to have this just go through Caltrans?
I would move that we accept this project as is. Am I heard?
Yes, I
Hello?
heard you, Warren.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear Jeff's Motion.
Yes, please.
Well, I was going to make a motion to approve Ned's project and to start moving ahead with it. With the footnote that that test panel will be finished and installed so that we could see how things look in daytime and nighttime.
So if, and my question with that would be then, if it's theoretically a test panel, so then if we approve the project before the test, then we've already proved it.
That's a good question.
May I make a motion?
Again, another one?
Yes. I
So,
would-
so I think
move-
technically, Jen, we should see if there's a second for either Warren's motion first. If there's not a second, then it's a failed motion and he can remake it. If Jeff has then made a motion, then you would call for a second. And if there's no second for that, that's a failed motion. And so you can keep doing that until, but I believe Warren does have a motion on the table,
Does
unless
somebody,
he's retracting it.
Warren, are you retracting your original motion?
No, I would like to move, we accept Ned's project as it is without a test panel. I don't think that's necessary.
Okay,
I'll second that one.
Sorry, did Lars just give a second on that?
Second, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. Would you like to call a vote, Carrie? Or
Sure. Committee member Arnold,
Yes,
committee member Strucker,
Yes,
committee member Langberg,
Yes.
vice chair Mills Dyson,
Abstain.
and chair Burtz.
I would also like to abstain.
Now, can I make a comment actually? So typically when the motion is made and second, there is an opportunity for discussion. So
Sorry.
the two people who just abstain might have comments or questions that would clarify the motion or amend the motion, and then it could move forward potentially. So
But it didn't really matter because it was a 3-2, right?
Yeah, so that you can amend and, do, if there are discussion points, as committee member Langberg noted. The motion passes 3-0-2. If there are additional, either amendments to it or additional motions, the committee is certainly welcome to discuss those. And it sounds like committee member Langberg might be asking for a little bit of discussion or encouraging that.
No, I'm fine with it as it is. I just want the committee to be comfortable with it. I think Ned has done a huge amount of work, and to ask him to do a mock-up, to me is just, as Warren said, I think it's unnecessary. I think he still has a long road to hoe in getting to Caltrans, and the project as designed, I think is great, and he still needs to even take it that direction. So to ask him to do more work after all the work he's done, I just don't think it's gonna make a difference. It's important. I don't think it's important to do that.
My impression was it wasn't additional work. It was taking a section that would be used.
correct.
there's work to even put it up and take it down.
Yeah, what if it doesn't get approved? Then he's done that work, right? So it is additional work. There's no question.
I was going to chime in with the fact that I would imagine Caltrans is probably going to love to see that test panel, as perhaps members of the city council would also like to see that test panel. So the fact, as you reinforce, Margie, that it would be used in the actual installation anyway, is something that Ned would be accomplishing regardless.
And I think my only reason for abstaining was because I think it's a little early to just approve it as is right now when we haven't even gone to Caltrans yet. So I don't think I understand why we're even passing a motion at this point before we've taken that first initial step to even see. When Carrie said we could go to Caltrans first, I just feel like this is really rushing, and I just would like to even know what they say. I feel like our history with 4 years of Caltrans is they're going to make some change. And then at that point, we are going to have to bring it back. And I just don't understand the rush at this point. It seems really, it seems rushed. And we're all gonna go for this. We all want this to happen. I just, to just say, yes, no matter what, right now, it just seems a little early when I feel like, let's just hear what Caltrans says. Either way, I'm on board. I'd love to see this happen. Just think there's gonna be changes.
Well, so the motion could be to approve it, to take it to the next step.
Do we need a motion to take it to the next step? I believe Carrie also already said that it's okay for Ned to take this to Caltrans and to bring it back to us. Do we need a motion for that, Carrie?
To be clear for the record, it would be, because it sounds like everyone is, I can see everyone head nod, other than Warren, but it sounds like there was consensus on the next step is running it by Caltrans to sort of get the go, no go from them to proceed. We can certainly come back to this group with the results of that. So you could make a motion to be clear that the committee is in favor of proceeding with the project, as Warren had noted, as is, without sort of redesign before we take it to Caltrans, but to wait to forward that recommendation to council until we know the results from Caltrans. So if someone, Jen, if you wanted to make that motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to allow Ned to take this to Caltrans as is, and then bring it back to us and let us know what they said, if there was going to be changes. Is there a second?
Second that.
Thank you. Should we go through in a vote?
Yes, thank you. And so this is a clarifying motion in terms of the steps to have NEDCON proceed to Caltrans with the artwork as is, and loop back into this committee. Committee member Arnold.
I have a motion on the table already.
So that motion, Warren, your motion has already passed. This is a secondary kind of clarifying motion.
Okay,
and,
you say
I don't know if there's
motion
any
has-
discussion before the vote.
Okay, my motion has passed.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a 3-0-2
Okay,
vote. So 3 votes is a majority. So accepting the artwork as is, and Chair Verts is either amending or clarifying that with another motion in terms of the next steps of the process.
okay, I will say yes.
Committee member Langberg,
Yes.
member Strucker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mills Lyson,
Yes.
Chair Verts.
Yes.
All right, and that passes unanimously.
I don't.
And if that's okay, we have still about 12 minutes to go through and touch on subcommittee updates, and we can just tell Ned to go for it and good luck. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
And Ned, let's you and I coordinate in terms of getting in touch with David Eng. If you want to reach out to him and just CC me with a request for this meeting, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll check in with you before I do anything.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ned.
Thank you.
All right, and we barely have any time. The other subcommittee was the art app. We've done nothing on it. It's there. I think we can just close that one right now. And then the sculpture garden, I know Margie wanted to touch on, but because of our time that we spent here with Ned today, I would like to, suggest that we really get deep on that again at the next meeting. We're also probably going to have Ned at the next meeting, but if there's something, a little short wrap that you want to discuss with us, this would be a great time.
Yeah, more of just a statement. So in terms of moving forward, which I would like us to do, and it could actually happen even during the pandemic. Warren brought up some concerns from some artists and so on last time. Carrie responded to those. We sent those. I sent those also to Warren. And so if we get his response on that, we can incorporate those concerns into the proposal and next time perhaps move forward with it so that it can happen without a great long wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Warren, did you have anything on that?
I just got an email this morning about it, and then I lost the email, so I've asked it to be resent. I have no comment because last minute information is not very useful.
It was
I
sent
need it.
yesterday.
I need it much earlier.
Yeah, it was sent out yesterday afternoon, I believe, or yesterday morning. Okay, so we'll resend to you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was faster than I thought it would be. I guess we can move on then to the planning department report.
Sure. So just a couple of items. We did have, and Margie, we talked about the COVID artist support program at the beginning of the meeting before you logged on. But you were obviously, you and Jen were both at the city council meeting for that last night. The other item on the city council meeting was the capital improvement plan budget, which includes the sculpture garden, concrete forms for the pads, and that was not cut from the budget. The parks budget remained relatively the same. There's a larger discussion on roads, but the CIP budget was the public hearing was held last night, and they approved it. It will need a second reading at the next council meeting, but that allows the sculpture garden project to move forward. The other updates from that meeting, one of the discussion points that some of the city council members had was that they would like to see at some point the PAC review the potential to expand beyond visual arts to include more specifically music and things like that aren't necessarily static visual arts. And so that's sort of if we look at the ordinance at some point, looking at how to make sure that that's clear within that. They also, a couple other COVID related items, the city does have a small business loan program that they've initiated. The Sonoma County Board of Supervisors also adopted and have a business support program. Those, I believe, were in the city's newsletter most recently. And then there is also updates to our facade improvement program for the city's Sebastopol, which were approved, and mostly those were trying to make it easier and more accessible to tenants and business property owners to go forward with that program. For that, we do have our first round of submittals due later this month, and then the November 4th DRB will be reviewing the applications received, and we'll be doing those on a quarterly basis. And then lastly, a couple of things in the discussion last night that came up, just to pass on that information to the others in the PAC and maybe think about potential future art projects in town. One was for the COVID artists. There was one of the council members had contacted both Margie and Jen and myself previously with suggestions that if the artists are interested in showing their work, that perhaps some of the downtown businesses where there are vacant windows or not very interesting windows could avail themselves of that. So as a potential additional, in addition to public buildings, I think the vice chair made it very clear that this wasn't about a purchasing art. It was a support effort for artists without any conditions, but certainly if people are wanting to showcase their art, that's a possibility. And then one other idea that has actually came up in our staff meeting the other day was regarding the downtown Sebastopol area has some unique sort of white lights for the holidays, and those will be going up as much as they can. We have some new trees that aren't quite going to be able to hold them, but we also have the banners, holiday banners. This is probably the last year of their useful life. And so one of the ideas I had that we don't have time for this year, but as a potential is potentially having artists, local artists design them rather than buying some sort of stock holiday greeting kind of a thing. I think it'd be a nice addition to downtown Sebastopol, and is inspired a little bit by the Barlow postcard artwork that's up in the Barlow right now, to say, hey, you know, if we have banners locally, why can't we have local designers as a potential public art committee project? So I just wanted to share that as an idea to think about.
One quick, Jen, did you share that we would be emailing the artists today and tomorrow?
I did.
Thank you. Two, there was a parklet thing that you didn't mention, Carrie.
Yes, thank you. The other thing the city council reviewed as part of their CIP budget, but also as a separate budget item, was we've been trying to establish some I think 3 to 4 parklets in the downtown area on Main Street. One is by Screaming Mimi's, one will be by Retrograde, and one will be on that first block of Main Street, I think kind of by the Cookie Company. And there was a suggestion of a 4th potentially in front of Portico. Those were approved by council last night, and there was again some discussion and suggestions of, you know, are there ways that they can incorporate art, not necessarily related to the COVID artist support, but is there a way that we could incorporate art into that with some local artists? That isn't part of the funding for that project, however. So Margie, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that since you were there.
When you say we got 3 parklets, who the city has proposed
The
this?
city, yes. So the city, and there've been a couple of folks from the core project, Paul Fritz, certainly, and he was there as part of the presentation. We've been having meetings to try to figure out how to do some parklets in town. Saratoga recently managed to get them permitted somehow very quickly with Caltrans. And so we're going to try to follow their process. But it was approved for the city to submit an application to Caltrans for those parklets, and a little bit of discussion on logistics for barriers and things like that. They would be, you know, basically public spaces, but likely with asking some of the businesses that they're in front of to adopt them. They aren't necessarily, they can't be restricted to, you know, private use of a public right of way, but they can be adopted just like adopt a highway in terms of maintaining them on a regular basis, since they'll be supporting the local businesses.
Well, I do want to say, I think that it would be good to look at our charter and at some other time have a discussion about whether the Public Arts Committee is engaged in also in other art forms like music. Mayor Slater wanted to include everything, cake decorating, maybe fingernail painting. I wasn't sure all the things, but we would think about what our purview is and what we want to be doing some later time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. If I'm not mistaken, we're about ready to wrap up, actually 3 minutes early this time. Unless anybody else has any comments, we could move to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Okay,
you,
that's
everybody.
everybody. If no one's opposed. Okay.